Welcome to our 73rd podcast. Today we'll be talking about motivation and share some key takeaways. What's one thing you can do to help your team stay motivated? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Rich Cruz, an organizational development consultant, and I'm joined by Ben Kleinman, my co-host and co-author and all kinds of other things. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, everyone. Hey, Rich.
So, Ben, we're going to talk about motivation today, yeah?
I don't want to.
How, Ben, how, help me help you. How can I get you to talk?
Not motivated. Not feeling it.
Not feeling it this morning. Come on. We have an audience that's just waiting to hear from you.
No, it's true. I am actually super excited to talk about motivation because it's super fun stuff, and you can never really get enough of it. And hopefully, we'll have some good tips for folks. And I would love to hear what our listeners have to say. So, Mom, I'm talking to you. And if there are other people that are listening and want to add suggestions or share their experiences, that would be fantastic. So give us a listen. Let us know what we got right, where we can improve. And as far as motivation goes, I think there's just so much we can dig into. So,
there's so much.
Rich, I think, you and I were talking a little bit about some of the theories, and as our resident theory expert, especially out of the two of us, I think we'll maybe tee up a few theories. We'll talk about some practical tips, and then hopefully at the end of the show, people can come away with one or two things that they can actually do in the workplace to help people who are either super, super motivated, stay motivated, or if someone is not particularly motivated, can you figure out a way to help them become motivated, or just leave them be, but make sure that they don't derail everyone else's motivation?
Sure. Well, Ben, we didn't talk about this, but I did want to ask you a question, because there's one thing that you do more than I do, but we both do it, and that's run, right? You're a distance runner, yeah?
I have done distance running, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to,
and
yeah.
So, I mean, it's very interesting. Like, you have to be motivated to do that, right? I mean, you have to maintain that motivation.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like 5 o'clock this morning, I'm like, oh man, this creaky 40-something-year-old body is not having this today. But you got to get out there on the trail and train. Is there something we can take from that we could even incorporate in the workplace?
I think absolutely, yeah. There's an internal motivation that most runners have, or at least most sort of, I don't know, casual. I would call myself maybe a casual type of runner, casual athlete type folks. And there's even if it's for something like weight loss, there's an image component of that, or strength training,
yeah,
strengthening. There's an internal component to that, even though it's maybe very exteriorly felt. There's that, but to just do it, like you said, get up every morning, or get up when it's dark, or go out when it's raining or when it's snowy. There's a lot, or when it's brutally hot. There's a lot of internal drive there, and I think that internal drive is there for running or biking or swimming or other types of weightlifting, going to the gym for some people, and for some people it's absolutely not. You could not pay them enough money. You could not jolt them out of bed with enough voltage to get them to do that. And there's just no way that's going to happen. And so it's really just variable. And I think a lot of that connects to who you see yourself as a person, how you see yourself as a person, what kind of person you see yourself in your sort of visualization of yourself, and how you want to manifest yourself. I will say for me
Sure.
that a lot of times running in particular helps me kind of calm and collect and think about things. It helps me step outside of my head for a little while. And I find that if I have a good run, I'm coming back to things, thinking about things that might be happening at home or at work or wherever in a different way with a very different perspective. And it's almost like there's no effort there that made it happen other than going out for the run. So I
Sure.
don't know if that answers your question, but I'm curious what drives you or what gets you out of bed to go run at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think there is some intrinsic motivation that's happened partially because of habit, so there's a book out there, not this is not a scientific book at all. It's a Napoleon Hill book, right? So, um, but it's called Outwitting the Devil, and so it's actually Napoleon Hill um, kind of having a discussion with the devil,
Okay.
and in the end, one of the things that one of the ways that people achieve what they want to achieve, right, is through habit, right? Or he calls it the um, hypnotic rhythm, right? But getting into a groove, right? And I mean, I think we've talked about flow before, but
Yeah, I was going to say that
there's
sounds very much like flow and
yeah,
some of the research that's been done around getting into a flow state and how
right,
it's almost effortless and you don't notice how hours go by and you've cranked out this amazing opus of work.
sure,
That can be
sure,
really powerful.
yeah, yeah, and I think there's this idea of what well let's define like two aspects of motivation, right? So I mean the ones that if you really need to put it into two buckets, right? Intrinsic
Mhm.
and extrinsic,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I think I derive more intrinsic motivation as for the running stuff, but certainly there are extrinsic rewards and things that keep us going,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm. So
so
let's just maybe define those two terms or perspectives. So, intrinsic motivation is typically driven internally. It's something that the person finds value or rewards doing. Essentially, you're doing something because it's the right thing, or you doing something because you want to do it. There's no external pressure to do it. It's all internally driven. Extrinsic
right,
motivation is more the flip side of that, where you have someone who's driving you to do something, asking you to do something, pushing you to do something, and maybe in a work situation requiring you to do something that you may not
sure,
really be interested in doing. And so you do it anyways because you want to get paid, or because you want the promotion, or you don't want to get
right,
fired, or you want to look good or maintain status with your colleagues, things like that. So those are all external factors as opposed to the
yep,
internal factors. You're doing something because it fuels your sense of autonomy or purpose or meaning, or it builds your own internal confidence, things like that. Is that
for
pretty
sure.
fair, that dichotomy there?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
the two perspectives,
absolutely.
maybe?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Autonomy, meaningful work, things that mean something to us and just feed, for lack of a better word, feed our souls, right? The things that hit those in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's those things that are those internal factors to us.
Hmm.
But we do have those extrinsic factors, and some of those are very baseline, right? The stability that we seek in our work,
Yeah.
the recognition and
Hmm.
other types of rewards, even monetary rewards, and
Yeah.
time off and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
there are times when you can be motivated by one more so than the other. There are times when it's a balance of the two. And it's not that one is right and one is wrong. There's
right,
research that shows that being intrinsically motivated can be sustained longer and can be done in a less resource intensive way. So whether that's you putting less effort into something or a company putting less effort into getting you to do what they want you to do, it's less effort if you're in general, less effort if you're internally motivated. But
Right.
there's not a necessarily a right or a wrong. It's just that one is maybe less effort, one is more sustainable, if you will. The
Sure.
intrinsically motivation tends to be more sustainable. Extrinsic motivation is usually good for one time bursts or maybe to jumpstart something, to start, like you're saying before, to start a habit, and then you intrinsically get into a groove where you maintain that habit, or you get the boost to do something, and then you feel like, oh, it's not so bad, I can keep doing it, and then you're in that new way of working, maybe for work, or you get that, for running. Let's say somebody says, all right, I'll bet you $1 you can't run a mile, and so you go and you run that mile, and you're like, it wasn't so bad,
Right.
and then you wind up running a mile a couple of times a week, and all of a sudden, a few months later, you're running in a road race and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, a balance there, and
Sure.
you just have to, the trick, and maybe we can get into this a little bit, or what's interesting is when you can start to play with both of those, and you can say, well, what does this colleague need right now? How do I boost this person's motivation? Do I want to play to their, help them see the intrinsic value, or do I want to play and help them see the extrinsic value? Or is the, where's the push, where's the pull? And
Right.
really, it's how do you get them to just be in a better place?
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's continue that because I think we're actually kind of a little bit into that where the rubber meets the road,
Yeah,
when we come back. So,
yeah, cool.
okay. We'll be right back.
And we'll be
Cool.
right here.
At Harmonious Workplaces, we believe work should provide purpose, satisfaction, and growth. We empower people to thrive by fostering environments where individuals can find meaning in their work and organizations can succeed through thoughtful, well-executed strategies. We're committed to making work better for the people who do it and the leaders who guide them. To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. And we're back. So today's episode, Ben and I are talking about motivation. We started just kind of general motivation, but let's talk about this in the workplace. There's a book out there. I think it's Angela Duckworth, if I'm not mistaken. That's Grit,
Okay.
and so grit is about sticking with it, right? Which is very hard to do,
It
right?
can be, for
But
sure. Yeah.
yeah. But I think some of what you talked about before we went to the break about achieving, something small and then building on it, like you said, like somebody challenges you to, I bet you can't run a mile, and you're like, I'm going to do it, but then you push yourself and running. Now you're running a race, right? Um, there's certainly some validity to that, and a lot of research to back this type of stuff up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's been countless books written on this term kaizen, which comes from Japanese literature and Japanese manufacturing practices, where the whole idea is you make one small change or one
Hmm.
small step, in this case, one small step to try to improve something or do something differently. And so,
Right.
in achieving that small step, you then begin this very long journey towards a new way of being or mastery of something, or it gives you confidence through achieving that one small step that you then have the confidence to keep going, and you kind of build that motivation, and slowly maybe you get into a flow, maybe you don't, but at least you're building that competency, building that mastery, so that you have that sense of purpose it starts to become a little bit more intrinsic than extrinsic in that sense. And so there's those things. I think that ties in quite a bit to some of the goal setting theory, Rich, that you've talked about. Maybe you can sort of shed some light on what goal setting theory is. It's
Sure.
exactly what SMART goals are all about, and maybe you can define those for people as well. And
Sure.
so then we can dig into how some of those things can help people too.
Yeah. Well, Locke and Latham, and they're not the only ones who have theories around goals. There's several of them, but those two researchers in psychology are, they have goal setting theory, right, which basically says that people are motivated when they are able to set and have goals uh, that are at this they have a purpose to them. They're related to that purpose, and that they are challenging, right? So it's not the just something fluffy, right, that you're going to get done. There's actually a meaning and a purpose to it, and there's some kind of a challenge that you have to overcome to do that, to achieve it. And once you can overcome that challenge, we're motivated to continue to try to up level, so to speak, right? I mean, we're talking to several generations now of video game players, and what are we? Why do we continue to play the games? Right? It's when I was a kid with the Atari, it was let's try to get the highest score, right? But when you look at other video games that are out there, right? What do you try? You're trying to get past this boss level, or you're trying to complete the storyline, or those types of things, right?
Yeah,
And it's increasingly harder and harder every time you go. But
right.
as you defeat, that level, right? You're like, I got to get to the next thing. I got to get to the next one, right?
Yeah. Okay, so stepping back for just one second, the
Yeah,
Locke and Latham, their theory, they proposed that in 1968, late 60s. So
it's been
it's been
around a while.
around a while, and it's been pretty stable, right? There's been a lot of validation for their approach in that sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and I think I'm not sure if the concept of SMART goals came directly from them, but we hear about that quite often, and I think that's an important aspect to setting meaningful and challenging goals.
Right.
Is they need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time constrained. Right? Those and I think the other part of that is that there needs to be some portion of feeling like you own that. Does that make it a
Absolutely. Yeah.
smart O?
Somehow we have to get
Oh,
smarty pants in there.
yeah, there you go. Right.
No, I think you're right. I think if there's no sense of ownership and it's purely extrinsic, the SMART goal can still be a SMART goal. It can be specific and measurable, and you can attain it, and it can be relevant and time bound. You might do it, but it's not going to be sustainable. You're going to need
Right.
someone to give you another SMART goal in another week or 3 months or whatever that is, and that then becomes effortful. Whereas I think
Right.
before we were talking about intrinsic motivation, it becomes almost effortless. And so you wind up setting your own SMART goals, and maybe those are in concert with someone that you're working with or a team or whoever you're supporting, but those are a little more self driven. That's maybe a more ideal state or longer term sustainable state. But I think the idea of a SMART goal is the same regardless. It's something that's very concrete and achievable, like you said, and
Right.
it's measurable. It seems like that's relevant and related to the idea of Kaizen. To me, they're very similar at a
Yeah,
high
that
level.
makes
And it seems
absolutely.
like it
Yeah.
ties into what you were saying about those three pillars of Locke and Latham's goal setting theory.
Sure.
Can
Sure.
you remind me of what those were?
I mean, the main part of it is that the goal needs to be, it needs to be very specific. It needs to be, there needs to be a purpose to it, right? They need to have, feel some sort of purpose, and there has to be some degree of challenge to it. I mean, there are some other aspects, but those are the
Right.
ones that jump out at
Okay.
me right now.
So if we take this idea of Lock and Latham, it's specific, that's directly related to the SMART goals.
Yep.
Purpose, it's relevant, right? So
There's
that's
that
tied to SMART.
relevancy.
Yep.
Yep.
And then the challenge, um, maybe measurable and attainable
Yeah, I think that's right.
to some degree, but that also ties into the ownership and then making it relevant to what a SMART goal might, on some days for me, a SMART goal is just making a cup of coffee, but on
There you
other
go.
days, maybe
Right.
that's just like table stakes, right? So
Sure.
it all
Sure.
depends on
Well,
how much coffee I've had before needing to make the coffee.
I mean, to be honest with you, I yeah, every day, not that anybody has to do this, but I've got my handy dandy
To-do
notepad
list.
here, and
For those
when
of
I'm
you
able
listening
to,
on the podcast, Rich actually picked up a notepad, a lined piece of paper with actual handwriting on it, and all sorts of good scribbles and check marks and things like that. So
yep,
Rich is old school.
and that in that sense, but we and with my clients, right, there's also using things like Microsoft Tasks or Teams or
Yeah, or Trello, any of those Kanban
Trello,
boards or
Asana.
project tracking software. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that actually Asana, if anybody's ever used Asana, which is a project management
Mhm.
tool, um, they have, when you actually check off a task, they might have pretty rainbows and
Right.
a banner or a unicorn. I think they have a unicorn that goes across the
Yeah,
screen, or
sometimes there's
wow,
a little unicorn with starbursty kind of glitter
yeah,
going across, and
yeah,
so they try
right,
to gamify it a little bit and make it fun.
sure, sure. But it just as you complete some of these things, right? These small tasks, or well, it depends on the valence of it, right? Like how big or how meaningful it is. Um, we kind of get a dopamine hit, right? Where we're like,
Sure,
oh yeah, I did that. And this
sure.
is,
And
I'm
that's
ready
also
for
a big
something
part
new.
of motivation, whether it's extrinsic or intrinsic. If it's extrinsic, let's say you get a bonus for meeting your sales quota, you get that check in the mail.
Sure.
That's a big dopamine hit.
Oh yeah,
Or if it's
absolutely.
intrinsic, when you run and you run a really good time, or you've run a particularly challenging course, or you got up on a day when it was super super yucky outside, but you did your run anyway. That's a dopamine hit for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it can come from both places,
Right.
which is not to say that all motivation is essentially being the dopamine doctor, but
Right.
there's
Right.
there's a component of that, enjoyment of fulfilling a goal or achieving a
Right.
goal, which is
But
probably why the SMART goal needs to be achievable. Because if it's too hard, like if you said, Ben, this morning I need you to go run a marathon, uh,
yeah.
it's probably not going
Right.
to happen.
But we're just talking about successes, right? But I mean, the thing is, we're gonna fail, right? We're gonna fail through
Oh yeah,
trying to achieve these things, right?
right.
And so there's some degree of this is, I think, where the grit part comes in, right?
There's a
Is
resilience component to that
there's a
for sure.
right,
Stick to
yeah,
itiveness, some people call it.
right,
Yeah.
and I think that comes with having some of those early wins, right, where we're building on, hey, I did do this, I did do that, I can do this, but I'm not there yet. um I recall working on a Salesforce implementation years ago. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. It was like 2 years ago. And I had one salesperson who was like, I'm not. I'm not tech oriented. I can't do this, this, why can't I just do this on paper like I used to do in the
Mm-hmm.
80s and all that stuff, right? And I was like, okay, wait, let's start small. Let's bring this back down to the basics. Show me how you do this. And oh, okay, I get that. Show me how you do that. Okay. And as we were able to demonstrate competency on these things, this you could actually see the self-efficacy, the self-confidence build, where out like while this employee was out on a sales call, called me and said, Rich, I can't believe I actually logged in on my phone, put in this contact, put in everything I needed, and I was able to get a reminder to be at this client's place. So I think I'm actually getting this right, and it
Wow,
was, and it's,
that's so cool.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
kind of went through that whole cycle.
sure. And it took a little bit of coaching, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But sticking to it and building on those little wins, I think, was really helpful, and something that we can employ in our projects and our change efforts, even in our day-to-day operations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's been really powerful in places that I've worked is when you have those examples. Bob, the
The
sales guy,
stories,
hated it,
right?
used it once, still hated it, used it again, found the win with a client, and now loves it. When you can take those stories and they become almost a little mythical or legendary, those become really powerful training tools and motivational tools in and of themselves, so that that sort of permeates the organization and helps other people get motivated or stay motivated as well. So those can become really powerful amplifiers, like you said, the
Absolutely.
stories there.
The legend of Bob. Bob the Mighty. He was
There you go.
conquered.
Maybe what we should do is take a break. And when we come back, we can talk about some of the tips or tools to help people become motivated or stay motivated. And then
Hmm.
we could also, if we want, talk a little bit about motivating colleagues who may not be interested in being motivated.
Awesome. Sounds great. We'll be right back.
Meet Hermie the HR Hermit Crab. Laugh, learn, and lead better with Hermie. Hermie is here to tackle workplace madness with heart and humor from Harmonious Workplaces. He's perfect for HR pros, leaders, and change makers. Hermie teaches workplace lessons through cartoons and is great for team discussions and workshops. Get your copy on Amazon now. www.hermiehrhermitcrab.com. Again, that's hermiehrhermitcrab.com.
And we're back. So, Ben, we've been talking about motivation in this episode, and we're coming up to the end here. And I like where you were going with, what are some practical things that we can bring
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to wrap this up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so the research shows that if you want to just get a little bit of a bump, so those extrinsic motivation tactics can be really helpful. You can give someone a little bit of a recognition or do some gamification stuff, have a leaderboard. You could give them, if your company does bonuses or things like that. Uh,
sure.
Pizza parties, those are all nice extrinsic motivators. If you wanted to be sort of on the maybe heavier side, you could use the stick as opposed to the carrot and sort of threaten no promotions or threaten to fire someone. Those are a lot heavier, so you have to be pretty judicious with those. But
Right.
they can be externally motivating, and
Sure.
like
Sure.
we've said already a number of times on this episode, the better ways to try to intrinsically motivate people, to help people find that intrinsic motivation. And so I think that's maybe where we can give a couple of suggestions. And Rich, you were talking before about how to help people out. And one of those ways was just by being curious and asking what drives them, what's their purpose, finding out what their internal motivation is, and then finding a way to connect that internal drive or their internal purpose to your organizational goals, your organization's missions and needs. If you're in the midst of a change or a transformation, you can try to connect those two. For
Sure.
sure, that can be a little bit more effort, and it's maybe not as scalable as fast as just giving everyone a bonus, but it's going to have much longer term benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's going back to talking about some theory, self-determination theory
Hmm.
talks about that people they need to feel like there's things that they do are related to them, that they have some connection and belonging with other people, but that they also have some autonomy in how they determine, that they have some control of their own life, their behaviors, their goals, right? They so there's that ownership aspect of it,
Hmm.
but without feeling like they're competent in their ability to do something. They're going to struggle, so they need to gain some of this, mastery and control of their own lives and environment and all of that, right? So which kind of goes back to the autonomy part too. But
Hmm.
um you know I've found that, having, like, even when I like leading a team, right? Um, there's organizational goals, right? We have to, everything needs to be, there's a reason why the organization's there, right? There's a customer. So we do need to be aligned to what are we doing
Hmm.
for the customer,
Yeah,
right?
the why, the
The why,
organizational why. Let's
organizational why,
qualify that. The organizational why is paramount there, and
right?
that's super important. And you're going to have to tie in any individual whys into that corporate why.
Sure. Yeah.
Otherwise, that's going to be a non-starter.
Yeah, right. And there's the relatedness part, right? Is how do I'm not just a cog in the machine, right?
Right.
Like, what is my real purpose here in this company, in this organization, I should say, right? How do I fit in here, and how am I important to this, right? Because I think there's again this kind of level of valence that you have to feel that, um, I am important. What I contribute is important here. And I think there's a thing is when we have people who feel like they're just a warm body. We hear that a lot, right? That I'm just here, and how motivated is somebody going to be? So I think there's some degree of helping people understand that,
Hmm. Hmm.
they're important, and how they fit into the organization.
Right, right, right. Can you define valence?
Yeah. So part of valence, is, from a psychological point of view, is like the degree of goodness or badness of something,
Okay.
if that makes
Okay.
sense, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
So you have to kind of recognize what's important to someone,
right,
and you have to tie that into their personal goals or their why, and you have to tie that into the organizational's goals or the organization's why.
right,
And it seems like that ties into a lot of the commonality that most people have in terms of what you were saying before. People have a need for status, respect. People have a need for some level of autonomy and mastery, and they need some level of relatedness with their peers. Having that sense of purpose can drive some of that as well. And so
sure,
tapping into those, feeding those, helping those thrive, all good ways to help someone become intrinsically motivated. We were talking before about SMART goals, so helping people to set and achieve their SMART goals, setting those expectations. I think one thing I've seen that is important and powerful is to set an expectation, give someone the trust that you think that they can do it, that you know they can do it, and that you're going to hold them accountable, and that accountability helps motivate them to achieve whatever that task is or achieve that goal. So there's a little bit of that expectation setting. But what's challenging is that you have to actually give them the authority to achieve that goal,
Right.
and you can't give someone accountability without the commensurate level of authority. That's where I see a lot of things get kind of sideways, because you'll tell someone, I need you to achieve this, and they say, well, that means I have to go and get permission from 87 people in 3 days, and that's not realistic.
Sure.
So that then that's an organizational mismatch there. That's not maybe a personal mismatch there.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, do we have time? Do we want to talk about maybe 2 or 3 things people can do if they have a colleague who is just not motivated?
Yeah, I think we have just about enough time to
Okay.
get into maybe just a couple of things. I mean, this is not going to be
No, this is not the therapeutic session deep
a
dive.
right. Yes,
This is
exactly.
tip of
Yeah,
the iceberg stuff. But if you
that's
need
right.
maybe just some starters, and then you can come find us at harmoniousworkplaces.com, and we can talk through any specifics in more detail.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
First thing, like you were saying before, just be curious. What's
Mm,
driving them? What's their purpose? Are they
right.
just there because they like their particular role, their niche? They're happy doing what they're doing. They are not interested in personal growth within work. They have all of their needs met outside of work, and this is really just work is really just an enabler for them, which can be fine, which can be okay as long as that still
Sure.
fits the organizational goals. If it's
Hmm.
something where that then starts to get a little bit hard in terms of where the organization is trying to go, then that becomes challenging. I think one of the things that I've seen work is just you focus on that person's performance, and if the performance is okay and good and it's meeting the needs of the organization, that's fine.
Sure.
Just know where that person sits, and that's you can count on them to do a great job doing whatever you need them to do. If the organization is shifting and that role doesn't meet the needs and that person's
Hmm.
not willing to grow, that's where it gets a little bit sticky. And
Right.
that's where you have to then have some of those tough conversations about, look, this is where the organization is going. Can we tie this into your need for finding value outside of work, still finding enough within work to give you what you need externally? Can you just change a little bit, maybe through some of those things we talked about, those small changes adding up over time, setting smart goals, maybe shifting 1 or 2 things, and that then still meets the needs of the organization? Or do you then have to start having those conversations about, look, maybe you need to find a different role, or you can keep doing what you're doing on a part-time basis, or we pay you less, or this is just not going to work out because this role is getting completely eliminated?
Sure. 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 And there's, honestly, Ben, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where we're not going to have some of those challenging conversations with people about,
Oh yeah,
this
absolutely.
is because it doesn't, because it, their purpose, their drive, their motivation may not align with what the organization's is,
For
for
sure.
whatever reason. Right.
People change, organizations change, and that's all okay.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
at that point, the best thing you can do is find someone like Elizabeth Constantine and help them offboard.
Help them off board. That's right. Yep. So there's certainly going to be times where we have to realize this isn't a good fit
Yeah.
and we have to move on. But
And there's a
but see,
graceful way to do that, and that's a whole different topic. But that's where
sure,
Elizabeth and Jenny Posar can speak to those kinds of things very
right,
gracefully.
absolutely, yeah. But if we're striving for retention, right? If we're striving to keep people and keep them on task and motivated towards their uh, what they need to do, right? Um, I do think that coaching is important. We've had several guests on who will corroborate that, right? Where like I think John Von Deal talked about that
Mm-hmm.
before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And you've talked about
so
coaching before as well, so
sure,
very
sure,
powerful.
yeah, yeah, and it's less about it's less about direction and management and telling somebody what to do, as it's helping them to come up with the answers themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to that ownership part of well, how can we make this better? Asking them, what can you do, and help them to get to an answer that they can own and that they can set
Mm-hmm.
their own expectations, and then
Yeah.
help them to clarify the expectation that we should have of them, from a management perspective, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else we want
Cool.
to add to that?
I think we've done a good overview. This is like
Mm-hmm.
the intro to history 101
Right.
in the first
If-
hour of lecture, and then you have a whole semester to unpack it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's just so much to motivation, and people are complex. Organizations are complex, and
Yeah, for sure.
there's all different manners of things. So I think, Ben, we should continue talking about motivation in some future episodes, diving into some of those more nuanced details.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right on.
would be great. Would love to hear feedback from listeners to see what
Absolutely.
might be most helpful for them in their their own settings, organizational settings, and
For sure.
what would motivate them to
Yeah.
listen more.
And folks, if you find us on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter,
YouTube.
Facebook, YouTube, and you see, feel free to put things in the comments. If you go to harmoniousworkplaces.com,
Yeah.
we have several different contact forms. We'd love to hear your feedback and
Mhm.
what you'd like to hear us talk about,
Yeah.
especially with regard to motivation.
Or if you have a challenge, our resident expert, Hermie the Hermit Crab, can answer your questions and we can post that as well.
That's right. We have the Ask Hermie form on our website too, so we could turn that into a podcast or a Zoom meeting or one of his cartoons. So,
A little video clip.
right on.
Cool.
Cool.
All right.
All right, Ben, you ready to take us
Cool.
out today?
Yes. Until next time, make change your friend.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode.